And I would like to know where the money comes from. It shall be paid from the funds of the office of the prosecuting attorney. Oh, Fani! Its future rests on a Republican former prosecutor to decide, are we going to pick this case up? This guy says, yeah, it's true. Stress, man. Says an alternative interpretation is that Trump genuinely believed fraud occurred. Yes. Ding, ding, ding. That's right, because it did. Trump's defense attorney, Steve Sadow from Fani Willis fame, is now saying that Fani must pay. He said that, of course, the case against the president is now going to be gone forever since no prosecutor in Georgia is willing to take this case back up. We've got that full memo now out. We read originally just the state's motion of a null pros, which means that they're invalidating the prosecution, saying we're not going to pick it up anymore, and it is now over. But we now have the rest of the full memo that came down from the prosecutor, the guy who made this decision, and he's trying to be very fair and balanced. He's saying, okay, the Trump campaign did a bunch of things that I don't like, but it's not necessarily a crime. It was kind of a gross situation, gross environment, really, disappointed in everybody kind of thing, but we're not prosecuting this case. We're not Fani Willis. We're not going to be exploiting the Georgia taxpayer for more money and funnel it to our lover in an effort to just take out our political opponents. That's not going to be happening. So Steve Sadow says Fani has to reimburse these people for reasonable attorney's fees, but Trump is celebrating. He says, breaking news, law and justice have prevailed in the great state of Georgia as the corrupt Fani Willis witch hunt against me and other great American patriots has now been dismissed in its entirety. This illegal, unconstitutional, and un-American hoax was perpetrated against our nation by Fani and her low IQ lover, Nathan Wade, at the direction of crooked Joe Biden and his handlers. Man, I don't know. I think Nathan was the smartest dude in this whole thing. He goes out, he does nothing for a couple years. He's indicting Big Fani like all day, every day, multiple times, and has like these hour-long lunch sessions. He gets an upgrade into his car. He's getting flashy clothes. He's on all the podcasts. He goes in, collects almost $1 million. And then as soon as there's a problem in the case, the judge was like, one of you has to go. He's like, sure, I'm out. He had enough cruises anyways. They'd already cruised up. Now, this case should have never been brought in the first place. The radical and unethical DA Fani illegally hired her boyfriend, Nathan, who's really dumb, huh, to prosecute the former president of the United States of America in a charade, even though he had never prosecuted such a case before, was completely inexperienced in RICO, and blatantly lied about everything, including their beautiful love affair. The ridiculously high amounts of money she paid him, unlawfully taking it from the honest taxpayers of Georgia. Their record-setting numbers of Caribbean cruises, vacations, and getaways, her clear campaign finance violations, and most importantly, their obsession with doing anything and everything to, quote, get Trump, just as the Biden White House told them to do. The deranged Democrats did all they could to viciously attack me, my supporters, and our MAGA movement for telling the truth. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen, and they committed crime after crime as they weaponized our law enforcement and justice system against honest and loving Americans. But we have fought back and won, both in the courts and politically, with our historic country-saving landslide victory of November 5th. We have to hold those responsible who attempted to destroy our legal system and nation itself as they tried to use it to silence and imprison political opponents for protecting our country and exercising our First Amendment rights. The few remaining Democrat witch hunts will soon meet the same embarrassing end. We are going to keep winning and continue to make America great again. That's from the president. And now that the cases have been dumped, you see, Steve Sadow says, ooh, now that Trump has won in Georgia, we will be moving for attorney's fees and for costs under Georgia law. This code section applies because the original Fulton County prosecutor, Big Fani, was disqualified for improper conduct, noxious odors all over Georgia. And the trial court subsequently dismissed the case in its entirety. And so now Fani must pay. Under Georgia law 1711-6, it says in the event that the prosecuting attorney in a felony or misdemeanor criminal case is disqualified due to improper conduct and the criminal case is ultimately dismissed following the disqualification of the biggest Fani in Georgia, any defendant against whom these charges are dismissed shall be entitled to an award of all reasonable attorney's fees and costs that were incurred by the defendant in defending this case. There were a bunch of defendants, man. A defendant entitled to fees and expenses shall file a motion for attorney's fees and costs. And we can't wait to read those. Within 45 days, the judge to whom the criminal case was assigned shall consider and determine reasonable attorney's fees and shall award those. And so they're coming out of Fani's big fanny. And I would like to know where the money comes from. It shall be paid from the funds of the office of the prosecuting attorney. Oh, Fani! They're going to have to forego some of those extracurricular activities over there. Attorney's fees and costs come out of her budget by the county. And so it would be better if it came out of her personal bank account. Remember, she has a lot of cash, apparently stuffed under her mattresses. She's a fancy, classy gal. She likes to drink Grey Goose. She told us that. So maybe there is some of that cash under the mattresses that you'll have to sanitize and detoxify before you could introduce it back into circulation. But maybe she can pay for some of that out of her own booty, since we want her to have some skin in the game. Of course, her lover got thrown off. She's going to cry victim. She'll probably write a book about this whole process. But now out of her budget, and I hope it's a lot. And the Georgia people can act accordingly the next time she's up for election. But they don't care. As long as Big Fanny's acting like Big Tish and they're both going after their political opponents using the arms of the state to do it, then they're happy about it and in for the battle. But here is the full memo that came down. This is the state's motion to null pros the case, meaning we're not bringing it anymore. This is now being dismissed pursuant to the interests of justice, courtesy of this guy called Peter Skandalakis, who is acting as the pro tem DA, filling in for Fani. She got disqualified. Time for her to go because of her noxious odor and her appearance of impropriety indicting her lover, whom she brought on the case. They write, from the new prosecutor, he is analyzing this. He says the Georgia election interference case is on life support. Its future rests on a Republican former prosecutor to decide, are we going to pick this case up? This guy says, yeah, it's true. Stress, man. It's on life support. The decision what to do with it falls on me and me alone. But unlike family members who must make the emotional decision to take their family members off life support, I have no emotional connection to this case. A former elected official who ran as a Democrat and Republican, I am. This is just based on my understanding of law. All right, I can't get over this opening line. But unlike family members who must make an emotional decision to withdraw somebody from life support, it's kind of like he's saying, I'm not making a life or death decision, but I kind of am. But I'm going to say that I'm not, but I'm still going to use the analogy so that you draw it in your mind and you know how important this is. Anyways, on December 14th, he says, Republican electors cast their votes. Then Trump called and said, we got to find 11,780 votes. Very normal campaign rhetoric. We saw Kamala Harris literally saying she took a phone call from her campaign staff. She was on a podcast somewhere saying that her campaign called her and said, we can't find 200,000 votes. That's just how you talk. Then Fani said, we're going to start investigating him after they stole the election. They created a grand jury. Grand jury came in and indicted the president. The case moved forward. We covered all of it. Now saying here, let me tell you about my philosophy and beliefs. As a career prosecutor for the past 40 years, my approach has been influenced by pretentious writing here going on. And this is what I'm talking about with prosecutors. I'm sure this dude's a nice guy, but like if you've just been in a prosecutor's office for 40 years, you just can't help. You start acting like this. You just start writing these like very deep, profound blog posts that you think, I begin the process of evaluating this. Stacey Abrams, like you don't have to talk about yourself, just do the analysis. Taken as a whole, I have therefore divided this into following sections. The Republican electors, gonna go through the whole thing. Jack Smith wrote in his report, to reiterate, as a prosecutor, okay, just say it. I am loath to use the justice system to pursue law-abiding citizens who in good conscience were asked to perform certain tasks. Attempting to criminalize the actions is a path I oppose and will not pursue. Acting on advice of an attorney they reasonably believe to be following the law, how can you charge these people? There is no criminal intent for them. It's the right conclusion. And so I'm not going to pursue these matters. And I have grave concerns. I decline to pursue these charges. Okay, right conclusion. Now he says these statements of these people were wrong. The RICO count places emphasis on the breach of computer systems. Sidney Powell pled guilty. I wish none of them would have pleaded guilty. Hall and others. Schaefer in a separate count. Going to go through each person and their evidence in the memo. Mark Meadows got a RICO count. While the call is concerning, reasonable minds could differ about how to interpret the call. Exactly right. Says an alternative interpretation is that Trump genuinely believed fraud occurred. Yes! Ding, ding, ding. That's right, because it did. While multiple interpretations are equally plausible, people. The accused is entitled to the benefit of the doubt. Well done. Judge McAfee, Jack Smith were all involved. Ruby Freeman got victimized by Rudy. That wasn't nice. But this entire case is without precedent. Never before and hopefully never again will our country face these circumstances. This case is now, maybe they shouldn't steal elections. Yeah, that'd be good. This case is now nearly 5 years old, removed from President Trump's phone call. There's no realistic prospect that he's going to come for trial. And if we held this case until after his election, after his administration is over, I've considered severing people, but that's going to take a bunch of resources. And so in conclusion, as I have previously stated, contesting an election is not unlawful. Both Congress and the legislatures recognize you can do this. However, it was not legitimate. It culminated in an attack on the Capitol. Okay. Undertaken to prevent Pence from carrying out his ministerial duty. It wasn't ministerial at the time here, Mr. Prosecutor. They changed the rules after the fact. This is ridiculous. But for this plan of using fraudulent elector certificates to disrupt the certification, I think he's saying they wouldn't have served as electors. Sidney Powell wouldn't have signed the contracts. If this plan didn't originate from the White House, all these people wouldn't have done this thing. And so Fani came out with a big fat indictment, a bunch of overt acts, hundreds. I've addressed a number of them, but not all of them. The strongest case here could have been prosecuted by Jack Smith, but he dumped his cases. And the criminal conduct alleged here was conceived in DC, not in Georgia. So if they want to prosecute this, Jack Smith should have done it. He couldn't do it. Citizens have every right to question their public officials. That's true. And my assessment here has been guided solely by evidence, by law, and principles of justice. And it's like, okay, first of all, I hope so. We want to endeavor to that standard, but everybody is, human. So it's going to be tinged with politics and your personal biases, whether you admit it or not, it will be. So we can all just see it. But anyways, it's an interesting declination letter, essentially is what it is. Not going to be taking up the prosecution. Case is now being dismissed, and Fani's office is going to have to pay out of their fannies for the costs incurred to these defendants who should never have been prosecuted in the first place. And they called Fani and they said, would you like to comment on this, Big Fani? And her office did not return a request for comment. Wah. So good news. Shout out to Steve Sadow. Hopefully we get a bunch of motions on this. Every person wrongfully prosecuted responds under Georgia code to collect their attorney's fees out of Big Fani's budget. We'll keep our eye on this one.